My mother didn't say hello. She just shoved a stack of hospital forms into my chest and hissed, "Sign it, Emma. We're not losing Harper again." Again? The word sliced through me. I stared at the consent forms, my name typed neatly beside kidney donor, while my father hovered in the doorway like a shadow ready to block any escape. "Dad, what does she mean, again?" He wouldn't look at me. "Just sign. Your sister doesn't have time for your questions." That was the moment I felt something shift. The first flicker of a truth I didn't know existed. If you've ever felt cornered by the people meant to protect you, stay with me. And if you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm 32. And before this morning, my life in Seattle had a kind of fragile peace to it. I lived in a small studio above a jazz bar where the music drifted up through the vents at night and helped me fall asleep. I worked as a UX designer for a tech startup, long hours but enough flexibility to kayak on weekends or grab coffee with friends after work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. A life carved out slowly after years of growing up in a home that revolved entirely around my sister Harper. Harper, the brilliant one, the daughter with walls full of trophies and shelves lined with medals, the girl whose photo greeted anyone who walked into our house, the child my parents guarded so fiercely it sometimes felt like they were afraid she might disappear. And me? I was the background noise, the afterthought, the daughter who learned early to stay small so Harper's spotlight never dimmed. But standing there in my doorway that morning, barefoot and stunned, I realized something I'd never allowed myself to admit. My parents weren't just afraid of losing Harper. They were afraid of something else, something tied to that single word my mother let slip. Again, something they had kept buried so deep, it would take the fight of my life to uncover it. And refusing to sign those papers was the first crack in the secret that would tear our entire family open. When my parents finally left my doorway, still furious, still expecting me to fold, I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. The silence felt heavier than their shouting. It wrapped around me like a thick fog pressing into my ribs. For a few minutes I just stood there, breathing slow, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. My whole life, their anger had been something I absorbed quietly, the way people take in secondhand smoke. You never mean to breathe it in, but it's everywhere. And eventually, it settles inside you. I picked up the hospital papers from the floor. My name stared back at me, bold and unapologetic, as if someone else had stamped ownership onto my body. A small part of me whispered, maybe this is what they expect. Maybe this is who you're supposed to be. But another voice, the one I'd spent decades muffling, rose just a little louder. You get to choose. You. I didn't have long to think. My phone buzzed in my hand. Mom. I didn't answer. 10 seconds later, Dad. Then Mom again. Then a text. You're wasting time. Harper's life matters more than your panic. The floor under me felt like it tilted. She always knew where to press, right where it hurt, right where insecurity lived. Your panic. As if fear made me defective. As if concern for my own body made me selfish. I swallowed hard and grabbed my keys. I needed clarity. Not noise, not guilt, not the crushing weight of expectations I never asked for. That's how I ended up in Dr. Keaton's office an hour later, the physician I trusted more than anyone. His windows looked out over Lake Union, sunlight turning the water into a sheet of glass. He skimmed my parents' forms with a frown deepening between his brows. Emma, did you agree to this? No. His jaw tightened. Then they had no right to fill out your medical consent. Living donation is major surgery. It must be voluntary. I know, I whispered, but they're acting like I owe her. He set the papers down, his voice dropping into something softer, something that felt like the first real safety I'd felt all day. You don't owe anyone a piece of your body. For a moment, I thought I might cry. From relief, from exhaustion, from the sudden realization that someone finally said the thing my parents never would. But then he continued, and the air changed. "There's something else," he said. "Your sister? She refused dialysis multiple times, months ago." I blinked. What? He nodded. "We recommended it early. She didn't follow through." The room seemed to tilt again, but this time from anger. Slow, burning, unmistakable. So she had options. Options that didn't include carving an organ out of me. Yes. That single confirmation lit a match inside my chest. For years, my parents treated Harper's needs as emergencies and mine as inconveniences. But this was different. This was them deciding that my health, my safety, my life was less important than her refusal to take responsibility for her own, and they expected me to fix it. I walked out of the clinic into the cold Seattle air, the wind slicing against my cheeks. People passed me on the sidewalk, holding coffees, walking dogs, laughing, living their lives, while mine felt like it was cracking open at the seams. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time with a voicemail. I forced myself to listen. "Emma," she said, her voice trembling with weaponized disappointment, "your sister wouldn't be in this position if you had been more supportive earlier. We almost lost her once. Don't make us live through that again." Again. There it was. That word again. Heavy, wrong, jagged. Lost her once? When? How? Why hadn't anyone told me? Something wasn't adding up. Something big. Something ugly. And for the first time in my life, instead of shrinking under their demands, I felt something new rise in me. A refusal. A boundary. A spark of anger that wasn't destructive but clarifying. Whatever this secret was, whatever again meant, I was done letting them twist my silence into obedience. The storm hadn't hit yet, but I could feel it building, pressure tightening in the air. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The truth was going to explode, and when it did, nothing in my family would survive unchanged. The rain had turned Seattle into a blur of gray by the time I reached my apartment. I shut the door behind me and let my back slide down until I was sitting on the floor, knees pulled up, breath trembling. The empty studio felt too quiet, too still, like the air itself was waiting for something to break. My parents' voices still echoed in my head. "Sign it. Don't hesitate. We're not losing Harper again. Again." The word wouldn't leave me alone. I forced myself up and moved to the couch. The hospital forms lay spread out on the coffee table, my name printed neatly across boxes I never agreed to fill. I touched the paper, half expecting it to burn. My own signature line stared up at me like a threat. My phone buzzed. Mom, then Dad, then Mom again. I flipped it over so I wouldn't have to see their names. But even the silence they left behind felt like pressure on my chest. Years of obligation disguised as love. Years of being told who I was supposed to be. A soft knock jolted me, not angry, not demanding, just gentle. Through the peephole I saw Lana, her hood damp from the rain. Relief washed over me as I let her in. She took one look at my face and sighed. "They came here, didn't they?" I nodded, unable to fully explain the storm inside me. She sat beside me, close enough that I could feel her grounding warmth. "Tell me what happened," she murmured. The words spilled out. My parents pounding on the door, the forms already filled out, the pressure, the demands, the way my mother had said again like it was a story I should already know. Lana didn't interrupt. She just listened, her eyes softening with each sentence. When I finished, she tucked her hair behind her ear. "Emma, this isn't love. This is fear. Control. And they've been doing it so long you can't even tell the difference." I swallowed hard. "They act like I owe Harper my life." "Do you believe that?" It was such a simple question, but it landed like a punch. I looked down at my hands. "She's always been untouchable to them," I whispered. "Like if anything ever happened to her, the whole world would collapse. "And if something happened to you?" Lana asked. The silence that followed felt like a truth ripping open. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened the message. Harper's condition worsening. "Your parents said you're refusing to cooperate." My breath caught. Cooperate. The word felt cold, medical, dehumanizing. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Dr. Olson." My stomach twisted. My parents hadn't just pressured me, they'd dragged a doctor into their manipulation. Lana took my phone gently. "Emma, they're trying to corner you." "I know," I whispered, "but I need to see Harper, without them." "Then go," she said, "but be ready." The hospital lights were too bright, too clean, too indifferent to the chaos tightening in my chest. I walked down the corridor, my footsteps echoing off tile floors, the faint sound of machines pulsing like a distant alarm. My parents were waiting outside Harper's room. My mother stood first, smoothing her coat with a practiced motion. "You finally came." "I'm here to see Harper," I said, my voice steady even though my insides weren't. Dad stepped forward. "The doctors need your signature. Stop dragging this out." "No." The word came out softer than I expected, but firm enough to freeze them. My mother blinked, stunned. "Emma, listen to me. We almost lost her once. We can't go through that again." There it was, that word again, heavy and wrong. I looked between them. "What do you mean, once? When did you almost lose Harper?" They exchanged a look. Not subtle, not careful. A flash of panic followed by something like warning. My pulse quickened. "Tell me." Dad's jaw locked. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I said. "You want my kidney, my body. You don't get to hide the truth from me." Silence spread like a stain across the hallway. For a moment, I thought they might finally tell me, finally peel back the layers of whatever they'd buried. But then my father inhaled sharply, steadied himself, and said the sentence that would change everything. "The truth is that Harper's life matters more right now." The words hit like a slap, not because they were new, but because they were honest. A truth they'd been living for 32 years. A truth I had felt every single day of my childhood. And standing there in that too bright hallway, something inside me hardened, not cruelly but necessarily. Whatever they were hiding, whatever again meant. It wasn't just about Harper. It was about me, about why I had never counted the way she did. And I knew with absolute clarity that the storm wasn't coming. It had already begun. I stepped past my parents before they could argue, pushing open the door to Harper's room. The soft beeping of machines filled the air, steady but fragile. Harper lay against crisp white sheets, her skin pale, her chest rising and falling with a rhythm that didn't look like the sister I'd grown up watching win every award imaginable. She opened her eyes when she heard me. "Emma," she breathed, her voice thin, but still carrying that familiar expectation. "You're here. Does that mean you'll, do it?" There it was. No hello, no how are you. Just straight to the assumption that I was there to give her what she wanted, what they all wanted. "I'm here to see you," I said quietly, pulling a chair beside the bed. Her lips pressed into a line, disappointment settling almost instantly. "Mom said you're being difficult." "Difficult?" I repeated. "Harper, they're asking me to give up an organ." "It's just one kidney," she muttered, like she was asking for a ride to the airport. "People donate all the time." I stared at her, stunned at the simplicity with which she framed something that could alter the rest of my life. "And you refused dialysis," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flickered. Guilt, irritation, something sharper I couldn't name. "Dialysis is miserable and risky, and Mom and Dad said—" She cut herself off, but I heard enough. "What did Mom and Dad say?" I pressed. "Nothing," she snapped too quickly. A truth she wasn't ready to speak hung between us like static. Before I could push further, my parents stormed into the room. "Emma, enough!" Mom barked, stepping between me and the bed like she was protecting Harper from an attack. "Stop interrogating your sister and sign the paperwork." "I'm not signing anything without answers," I said. Dad's voice rose, low and rumbling like distant thunder. "We don't owe you explanations." I felt something inside me twist, a hurt that was old but still tender. "You want my kidney, but not my questions?" Mom crossed her arms. "Your questions don't matter. Saving Harper does." "And what about saving me?" I asked. "Does that matter?" Silence, cold, heavy, telling. Dad exhaled sharply. "You were always dramatic. This isn't about you." I laughed, quiet, disbelieving. My body is literally the center of this conversation. Harper shifted in the bed, her voice small but urgent. "Emma, please, if you don't do this, I don't know what will happen to me." Something in her tone tugged at an old instinct, one shaped from childhood, where her fear always overrode my pain. But this time, the instinct didn't take over. Something else rose instead. Clarity. "If I do this," I said slowly, "I need to know the truth. What does 'we can't lose her again' mean?" Mom froze. Dad's shoulders stiffened. Harper looked away. There it was, the secret pressing at the edges of every conversation we'd had in the last week. "I'm done being kept in the dark," I said. "If you want me to even consider this, tell me everything." Mom's voice went sharp, brittle. "You don't get to make demands." "I do," I countered, "when you're demanding a part of my body." Dad slammed his palm onto the metal railing of Harper's bed, the sound ricocheting through the room. "Emma," he growled, "enough." But something in me had already shifted. The fear that had once ruled me wasn't gone, but it was no longer in charge. I stood taller, not physically, but in the way my voice no longer shook. "If you won't tell me," I said quietly but firmly, "I'll find out myself." Mom stepped closer, her face inches from mine, her voice a whisper made of ice. "You don't want the truth." Her words weren't a warning, they were a threat. I held her gaze. "Maybe I do." As I walked out of the room, I didn't look back. My hands were shaking, but my spine felt straighter than it had in years. Whatever they were hiding, whatever they were protecting, I knew one thing now. The truth was big enough to terrify them. And that meant I wasn't stopping until I uncovered it. Leaving the hospital felt like stepping out of a world, running on someone else's rules and into air that finally belonged to me. But the oxygen didn't make it easier. My mother's voice, "You don't want the truth," looped in my head with a weight that followed me all the way to the parking lot. By the time I sat in my car, fingers curled so tightly around the steering wheel my knuckles whitened, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done being managed, done being steered, done being told who I should be and what I should give. And if the truth scared them that much, then I needed it. I didn't even realize where I was driving until the familiar sign for Harborview Medical Center loomed ahead. Not the main hospital, Dr. Keaton's building. The man who had spoken to me like I was a person, not a resource. By the time I walked into his reception area, I was soaked from the rain, breath unsteady, pulse tapping against my throat like a plea. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She just ushered me toward his door the moment she saw my face. He looked up from his desk, concern settling instantly over his features. "Emma? What happened?" I sank into the chair across from him, the fabric cool beneath my palms. My parents said they almost lost Harper once. They refused to explain. And the way they said it, like I should already know, like it's some shared memory we never had. I swallowed, realizing how tight my voice had become. "I need to know what they're talking about." For a moment, he didn't move. Then he leaned back, steepling his fingers, his expression caught between compassion and caution. "There is an entry in her early medical history," he said slowly. "Something from when she was an infant. A serious condition. An emergency. He paused, searching my face to make sure I understood what he wasn't allowed to say out loud. It would have been a traumatic experience for your parents. My heartbeat stuttered. Why didn't they tell me? He held my gaze. Emma, families don't hide things because they're small. They hide them because they believe the truth will change everything. The room suddenly felt too warm, too close. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't, and because he was right. The truth would change everything. When I left his office, the rain had softened into mist, the kind that clings to your hair and skin like a warning you can't quite read. I walked to my car without feeling my feet touch the ground. The city around me blurred into shapes. Traffic lights, silhouettes beneath umbrellas, reflections in puddles, while a single question pulsed beneath my ribs. What happened to Harper? And why did they bury it? Back home, the quiet felt sharper than before. I dropped onto my couch, letting my head fall back against the cushion, and before I could take a full breath, my phone lit up. Mom, Dad, Mom again. I ignored them all. Then a new message appeared, from a number I didn't recognize. Emma, it's me, Harper. Please don't tell Mom and Dad I'm texting you. I froze. Another message came. I need to talk to you before they do. I can't keep pretending. Not about this. My chest tightened, breath catching in that space between fear and revelation. So Harper knew. She wasn't just a piece in their story. She was holding part of the secret herself. And suddenly I understood something with absolute clarity. My parents didn't want the truth out, but Harper wasn't sure she could hold it in anymore. Whatever they were hiding, whatever, again, really meant, I was finally close enough to touch it. And the next conversation, the one waiting for me at Harper's bedside, would be the one that blew everything open. In the weeks after everything unraveled, after the truth was finally spoken out loud, and the storm I'd feared for years finally broke, I found myself walking through my days a little differently. Not lighter, not exactly, but steadier. Like my spine had remembered it was allowed to hold me upright. The truth didn't fix my family. It didn't magically rewrite the years I spent feeling like a shadow standing next to someone else's spotlight. But it did something quieter, something more powerful. It lifted the weight I'd been carrying without even realizing it. The weight of believing their version of me. The weight of trying to earn a love that was always conditional. For the first time, I understood something I wish younger me had known all along. You can't set yourself on fire to keep people warm, even when those people share your last name. Healing didn't come in a dramatic moment. It came in small ones, in making coffee without shaking hands, in waking up without dread, in allowing silence to feel peaceful again instead of threatening, in realizing my value didn't shrink just because someone else couldn't see it. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this. Family isn't defined by who demands your sacrifice. It's defined by who honors your boundaries. Some people won't understand the choices you make to protect your future. Some will call you selfish for choosing survival over surrender. And some will insist that your worth exists only in what you can give them. But you're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to walk away from stories that were never written for your happiness. And you're allowed to rewrite your own. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the invisible one, the overlooked one, the one expected to hold everything together while quietly falling apart, I hope this story reminds you of one thing. You deserve a life that doesn't ask you to disappear. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for allowing this story to sit with you for a moment. If this resonated with you, even a little, please consider liking the video or subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter. It truly helps more than you know. And if you're ready for another story, one about truth, second chances, and the kind of strength that only grows in the dark, I'd love for you to join me in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself. You matter more than you think.